This is the People in Profit podcast, featuring your host, Nes Velasquez, a multi-six-figure industry influencer and investor. Learn tips, ideas, and strategies as we cover various topics and interviews you can use to experience further financial increase. Let's get started.
How's it going, everyone? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending where you are residing around the world or where you're traveling to. So, a couple of episodes ago, I spoke about Charlie Munger's The Psychology of Human Misjudgment, which is something that he brought up in one of his lectures at Harvard University in 1995. Basically, it's detailing how humans trick themselves into making terrible errors of judgment. And so I'm going to go through the list that he shares that pretty much covers the standard causes of human misjudgment. First, psychological denial. Reality is too painful to bear, so people distort it until it is bearable. He gives us a story about a parent who lost her son, who happened to be a student athlete, to a plane crash, and she was basically in denial that he has passed. A lot of times what we do is we tell ourselves white lies, and to the point we start believing in it. Just like the same old cliche, the truth hurts before it sets you free. But the hurt part is extremely real, which is why, after a traumatic experience, after receiving news of something so painful, psychological denial is most likely to happen. So that's the first cause. Next one, agency costs. So Charlie Munger, he basically talks about that if you learn the basics of your advisor's trade, you can avoid a lot of agency costs. It's easy for someone to put on a suit, talk about they're an expert in any one thing, and of course it's going to attract clients. It's going to attract customers that are looking for, those products and services that, company X offers. But if you start to learn the basic elements of your advisor's trade, you can avoid a lot of that. You can literally save yourself time, energy, and money. Let's move on to the next one. Bias from consistency and commitment tendency. Now, it's evident that if you've been an expert in a certain field for an X amount of years, because you've been consistent and you've been committed to your cause, to your work, you've developed different theories, you've developed different strategies, you've developed a bunch of different ways to deal with certain things. And so with that commitment, with that consistency, you develop this strong, very strong bias where you just don't let any seeds of new thoughts, new theories, new ideas, new solutions to problems, you don't let it in. So Charlie Munger speaks about how the human mind is like a human egg, right? Once a sperm is inside, there's a shutoff mechanism that prevents other sperm from entering that human egg, the same way how there's this shutoff mechanism that a lot of people have after being an expert in the field for an X amount of years, that they don't let anything new in. Just like the same old cliche goes, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Moving right along. Bias from Pavlovian association. So a lot of people learned about Dr. Pavlov and his experiments. Basically, he was able to get his dog to react in certain ways when they hear certain things, smell certain things, saw certain things, right? And how with consistency and with time, you could almost always spark a certain reaction that you're looking for if you know what buttons to press, basically. It's a powerful thing because it works at a subconscious level. So Charlie Munger says, basically, and I quote, 3/4 of advertising period leverages Pavlov, misconstruing past correlation as a reliable basis for decision making, and it's just an enormous, powerful psychological force. This tendency works at a subconscious level. Now, many people believe that when they think of economics, when you raise the price of product A, they will lose to product B if product B has a lower price. The truth of the matter is the reverse is most likely what's going to happen. When you raise the price of product A, it'll actually start to dominate the market share. Because people pretty much, they associate higher price, higher premium for better product or better service or more quality product or service. Next one, a bias from reciprocation tendency. A gentleman asked people to take delinquents to the zoo. 1 out of 6 of them agreed. Now, I want you to listen to this here. Then, the gentleman asked other people if they could do that twice a week and got a 100% no response. But with the second group, he backtracked and asked for 1 time a week, and this time got a 50% response. 50% of them to agree. So let's take it back for a second. With group A, 1 out of 6 agreed, right? Keep this in mind. With group B, he got half of them to agree. That's a way better improvement because he asked for something that was pretty much stretching it. They gave him a no. He backtracked and asked them again. That persistency got him a better response rate than the first group. Think about that for a second. People apply this strategy to sales all the time. Ask for a lot and back off. This is why if you ever had a sales job, if you ever had a corporate sales job, you're trained to talk to prospects and start with the highest product or service first and then work your way down. So the human mind could be manipulated that way on a subconscious level. Here's the next one. Over-influenced by social proof. That is the conclusions of others, particularly under conditions of uncertainty and stress. This is why testimonials are so important. No matter what you're selling, testimonials are the key to selling. So if you're looking at infomercials, if you're looking at a lead capture page, you're looking at a squeeze page of some sort, an internet sales page basically, you could get the description of the products and services. You can see how it works. You can see all of that. And it could be the best of the best. But what really sells it, all right, are the testimonials, are the social proof from others. This is why they say facts tell, but stories sell. Stories is key. So it goes back to Charlie Munger when he mentions the over-influence by social proof. Here's the next one. Bias from contrast cause distortion of sensation, reception, and cognition. He talks about the example of the frog in the water, right? Let's say you drop the frog in a pot, and let's just say the pot is hot right now. What do you think the frog is going to do? The frog is going to leap off. The frog is going to jump off, right? But let's say you drop the frog in a pot with room temperature water. Slowly but surely, you're raising up the temperature. And then eventually, before the frog knows it, before you know it, the frog dies because it was boiled alive. So that's the bias from contrast caused distortion of sensation, reception, and cognition. A lot of these companies, what they do is they make you feel a certain way. And before you know it, you're getting screwed. All right? Think of historical, contracts in the music industry or any industry for that matter. There's always these little provisions, these little terms and conditions that basically could be there and you not notice it. And before you know it, those little things that you agree to end up becoming a problem because you felt a type of way. You felt good at the time of purchase, right? You felt like all the conditions were right, but there were certain little things that you didn't catch on to, and it bit you in the ass later. Bias from over-influence by authority. So this is really interesting here. It goes back to what I talk about with people, how anyone could basically put on a suit, say they're an advisor, have a fancy business card, look the part, and you're just taking their advice at face value, right? This goes back to what we were just talking about when it came to agency costs, right? It's kind of similar in that way, where we just kind of become suckers and think anybody with a suit, anyone who looks the part, anyone who looks like a professional in their field, we just kind of, take their advice at 100% face value and not peel the layers back, right? So there's an example here regarding this, and Charlie Munger mentions that sometimes what pilots do to train other pilots, right, to train their co-pilots basically, sometimes what they do is they purposely do the wrong things during these flight simulations just to see if the co-pilots will react, just to see if the co-pilots will be willing, all right, to step up and take control if their pilot, if their boss is just not doing anything right. And what happens in these simulations is that the plane crashes. Listen to this. The plane crashes 25% of the time. And this is in simulations. This is during training. So I don't want you all to think that this may happen to you during a flight that you're on. But this is the example Charlie Munger was using. Bias from deprival superreaction syndrome. So Charlie Munger talks about, an example of taking something out of his dog's mouth. His dog doesn't bite anyone unless you try to take something out of his mouth. Sometimes humans are the same. And I just had a conversation earlier today with someone where we were talking about the government shutdown and how it can have extreme negative effects if this government shutdown lasts for long enough. So I was confused at the message that was given to me, and I said, I can't see government employees going batshit crazy and robbing people. I can't see that happening because they're government employees, and a lot of times they're prepared for this kind of stuff, right? Working for the feds is basically, stability for the most part until a shutdown happens, which is a rare occasion. And this time we're having it. So I just couldn't see any government employee kind of going batshit crazy in the streets of New York. And so the person that was bringing this to my attention said, no, it's not about them. Think about the people that are dependent on food stamps right now, the people that are dependent on Section 8. A lot of them aren't able to get into homes. A lot of them aren't able to get food. So I thought about that for a second. I said, okay, now you have a point. So if this government shutdown lasts for long enough, if it lasts for another couple of weeks, we're going to be honest here, we're going to see a slight spike in crime, right? Because people need to eat and people, need a roof over their heads. And if not, they're going to take it. Humans are the same. You take away their food, you take away the shelter for long enough, and they're deprived, and it's hard for them to do something about it. They're going to do something about it outside of the law, right? Basically. Next one, bias from envy, jealousy. I mean, that's basically self-explanatory, right? And I deal with this myself. Some of you have seen this on my YouTube channel. Some of you have seen this on my Telegram. Some of you have seen this where if you're doing good, right, there are some people that are going to come out of the woodworks and they're going to say something negative about your success. So they have their own bias, but they don't understand that that bias is stemming from their own envy and jealousy. One of my close partners, Leo Manaya, who will be featured on a couple of episodes here and may even be a co-host. We're still pretty much working our schedules around that. The guy's a seven-figure trader. He's a very, very good person to be around with. And this guy has more haters than you could possibly know. The thing is, a lot of these haters have no reason to hate on the guy. But guess what? They have their own bias. These haters have their bias from their own envy, jealousy. Next one, bias from chemical dependency. Oh, this is a touchy one here. So if you know people that are substance abusers, people that are dependent on chemicals of any sort, obviously they're going to have their own bias as to why they should be excused for depending on whatever drugs they're on or the alcohol that they consume. Take an alcoholic, for example. They're going to justify why they're drinking alcohol from morning to night every day. Next one, bias from misgambling compulsion. This is a good one here, and I want you to, once again, write this down if you can, or just absorb the nuggets here. Bias from misgambling compulsion. You see, the people, okay, who run the casinos, they know exactly who to target. They know exactly how to get you hooked. So check this out. You ever notice that when you're on a slot machine, right? Let's say you're aiming for those 3 sevens all across the board, right? But you get 7, 7, and then something else, which causes you to lose. What happens is those near misses, right? Almost missing the goal is going to keep you hooked to continue to do it, right? Now, this is a trick. This is something that they know. So it's similar to deprival superreaction syndrome, except this is more on the gambling level, okay? So you get these near misses, and that keeps you engaged so you can keep funding your money to bet some more, to gamble some more. Gambling addiction is a very huge problem in America that causes people to lose their homes, lose their families, lose their minds, right? So they understand this bias from this gambling compulsion. These slot machine makers understand this. These casinos understand this. Next one, bias from liking distortion. The tendency to like oneself, one's own kind, one's own idea structures and tendencies are usually susceptible to being misled by someone's like. So this is interesting here. Before, we were talking about how, in the last episode, we were talking about how demographics contribute to civilization, to bettering civilization. We were talking about demographics, we were talking about urbanization, and we were talking about self-interest and competition and all that stuff and how it helps boost civilization. Now, liking distortion, okay, is similar to how people kind of gravitate towards their own demographic, right? But here's the thing. If you take a look at prisons, if you take a look at just mostly everything, like attracts like. You're going to gravitate towards those who you can identify with. So it doesn't necessarily have to be race, it doesn't have to be ethnicity, it doesn't have to be culture, it could be mindset as well, right? So for example, a bunch of nerds could be hanging out together, playing World of Warcraft or something like that, and all of them could be different ethnicities, different races, whatever. They have a like mind. Bottom line is, all right, you're going to gravitate towards those who are, kind of like you in a way. But the bias from liking distortion stems from you gravitating towards someone that's similar to you, and next thing you know, you don't really quite get what you're looking for, right? It's easier for someone who looks like you, thinks like you, to fool you. That's bias from liking distortion. Disliking distortion is basically the reverse way. It's the reciprocal of liking distortion. Now, there are other normal limitations of senses, memory, cognition, and knowledge. So we'll cover this one. This will be the last one. And this is the last one that Charlie covers, and that is stress-induced mental changes. You see, Pavlov's dogs were drowning. We're going to reference Dr. Pavlov once again. So Pavlov's dogs were drowning, and out of the dogs that were saved, Pavlov noted that they had a total reversal of their conditions. So whatever that Pavlov was using to influence them to react in certain ways, according to different sounds, different sights, different smells, whatever, that pretty much all went out the window. So these are all the things, once again, that Charlie Munger lists as the standard causes of human misjudgment. So let's quickly recap. Psychological denial, agency costs, bias from consistency and commitment tendency, bias from Pavlovian association, bias from reciprocation tendency, over-influence by social proof, bias from contrast cause distortion of sensation, reception, and cognition, bias from over-influence by authority, bias from deprival superreaction syndrome, bias from envy, jealousy, bias from chemical dependency, bias from misgambling compulsion, bias from liking distortion, disliking distortion, stress-induced mental changes. If you haven't heard it already, I recommend, once again, because you heard me say this before, if you've been listening to some of the other episodes, I recommend that you watch Charlie Munger's lecture at Harvard University in 1995. So definitely check that out, and I think you're going to appreciate that. I hope you found value in this episode. I'll see you next time.